A story broke over the weekend that has left official Washington with a whole different range of emotions, ranging anywhere from mild puzzlement to extreme worry. The story goes something like this. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was admitted to the hospital on January the 1st from complications related to a procedure that he'd had done a little earlier in December. Okay, in and of itself, you hear that news and you're not necessarily all that shocked. But what is shocking is the fact that the Secretary of Defense didn't tell his boss, President Biden, that he was in the hospital for 3 full days. What does all this mean? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all this in just 1 second.
My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk.
It's very rare these days when a story or an issue comes along that unites both the left and the right in this country. But the circumstances surrounding Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's hospitalization has done just that. So we're going to take a look at what exactly happened, who knew what and when, and talk about what it means and what should actually be done, at least in the opinion of your humble front porch conservative. So let's start with Politico, and we read the following. Headline: Pentagon did not inform Biden and the White House for days about Lloyd Austin's hospitalization. The news came as a shock to top staff, including National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Article written by Alexander Ward, Laura Seligman, and Jonathan Lemire. We read the following. The Pentagon did not inform President Joe Biden and other top officials about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization for 3 days, three different U.S. officials said. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and other senior officials at the White House didn't know of Austin's January 1st hospitalization until Defense Department sent word over on January 4th, two other U.S. officials said. Sullivan informed Biden shortly after DOD's Thursday notification. The official said it was highly unlikely that Austin conveyed word to Biden privately before Sullivan's briefing. Quote, if Jake didn't know, there's no way the president knew, one of them said. Who would have told him of Austin's condition if not Jake? And if someone did tell the president, Jake would have been the first phone call. All officials and other people who spoke for this story were granted anonymity to discuss a sensitive issue. Biden held a, quote, cordial conversation with Austin on Saturday night, per one of the U.S. officials. Quote, the president has complete trust and confidence in Secretary Austin, the official said. A National Security Council spokesperson echoed that sentiment, noting Biden, quote, is looking forward to Austin getting back to the Pentagon. But the news of Austin's situation came as a shock to all of White House staff, as they were unaware the Pentagon boss was dealing with complications following an elective medical procedure. The officials said. The National Security Council staffers were surprised it took the Pentagon so long to let them know of Austin's status. The Pentagon didn't make the information public until Friday evening, notifying Congress about 15 minutes before releasing a public statement. Boy, talk about an absolute lack of respect for the Congress, but I digress. Quote, this should not have happened this way, said one of the U.S. officials. The NSC and the Pentagon declined to comment. In a Saturday statement after an earlier version of the story published, Austin said, quote, I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better, but this is important to say. This was my medical procedure, and I take full responsibility for my decisions about disclosure. Okay, let's get into this. For those of you who aren't necessarily aware of what's going on, basically it goes like this. The Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, went in for an elective procedure sometime in the month of December. And I've got a timeline here from CBS News. I'll lay this out for everybody, for those, like I said, who aren't aware of what was going on. Again, this is from CBS News, and here's how the timeline of events occurred. On the 22nd of December, Austin underwent an elective procedure while on leave. The Pentagon has not released any information on Austin's procedure, citing privacy. Okay, I can understand that part. It's an elective procedure. However, there are some questions that I have. Um, was he under anesthesia? Were his powers transferred to anyone else, as is normal policy, at least as I understand it in this situation? So, how long was he out? Was he out? And who was running the Pentagon while this procedure was being done? Seems like reasonable questions. But let's continue with the timeline. The next day, Austin is discharged and goes home. Okay, fine. On January 1st, President Biden holds a call on the situation in the Middle East with Austin, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, according to a National Security spokesperson, John Kirby, who gave a briefing on January the 8th. All right. All this up to this point seems relatively normal. However, at some point on January 1st, Austin experiences, quote, severe pain and is transported to Walter Reed Military Medical Center and is admitted to an intensive care unit. Pretty serious. On January 2nd, now here's the interesting part. Some operational responsibilities are transferred to Hicks. We'll come back to that momentarily, but just keep that one in mind. On January 2nd, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, notified Austin had been hospitalized. Also on January 2nd, Pentagon Press Secretary, Austin's Chief of Staff, and Austin's senior military advisors learned Austin is in the hospital. On January 4th, the U.S. conducts strikes in Baghdad at 12 p.m. local time, according to a defense official. Ryder said on January 8th that Mr. Biden and Austin had approved the strike before Austin was hospitalized. Also on January the 4th, Defense Department Chief of Staff notifies Deputy Secretary of Defense and the White House that Austin is in the hospital. January 5th, the next day, Senate Armed Services Committee informed of Austin's hospitalization. Also on January 5th, Pentagon releases first public statement says Austin was hospitalized since January 1st. In that same day, Austin resumes full duties from Walter Reed in the evening. Saturday, Austin releases a statement taking full responsibility for the delayed disclosure. And also on Saturday, Biden and Austin speak. President says he has full confidence. Okay. I have some questions, at least upon the basis of the timeline that's been laid out here. All right. January 2nd, some operational control is transferred to Deputy Defense Secretary Hicks. And I realize that there's military secrecy involved with certain amounts of this, so I may never get the full answer I want. But what kind of operational responsibility? If he's under anesthesia or if he's unable to perform his duties, which apparently he was, he had to transfer some or all of his powers to the Deputy Defense Secretary. What did that include? And here's another question that I have. If a situation had come up where the president needed to turn to the Secretary of Defense, who's the president talking to? Is he going to be talking to Austin? Well, apparently not. He would have been talking to this Deputy Defense Secretary Hicks, who, by the way, according to what we're being told, was never even made aware that Austin was in the hospital, and that was the reason that the powers were being transferred. Take a look at this. This is also from CBS News. Deputy Defense Secretary was not told of Lloyd Austin's hospitalization when she assumed his duties, officials confirm. Article written by Caitlin Yellick and Eleanor Watson. The Deputy Secretary of Defense was not told that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had been hospitalized when she assumed some of his duties on Tuesday, two different defense officials confirmed to CBS. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks was informed of Austin's hospitalization on Thursday. Hicks was in Puerto Rico and returned Saturday, according to one of the officials. Austin had been hospitalized since January 1st due to complications following a minor elective medical procedure. The Pentagon said Friday in its first acknowledgment of the hospitalization. Austin spent time in the ICU, according to an administration official. The White House was also not aware of Austin's status until days after he was admitted to Walter Reed National Medical Center, a Biden administration official told CBS. Defense officials said General C.Q. Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was informed that Austin was in the hospital on January 2nd, who is the president's principal military advisor, did not inform the White House of the condition. One senior defense official learned of Austin's hospitalization via email from Austin's chief of staff Friday afternoon, just hours before the Pentagon's public statement, an official told CBS. The news that not even the Pentagon's second in command was aware of his status adds to growing questions about his condition and why it was kept a secret. Reading a little bit further into this article, there is one thing I wanted to point out. Let me see here. Let me find it real fast. Hang on. Okay, here it is. CNN was first to report Hicks was not aware of the hospitalization until days later. On the afternoon of January 2nd, the Secretary of Defense transferred to the Deputy Secretary certain operational responsibilities that require constant, secure communication capabilities, Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Patrick Ryder said in a statement Sunday afternoon. This transfer occurs from time to time and is not tied chiefly to health-related matters. The Deputy Secretary keeps a complete suite of communications and capable staff with her at all times, regardless of geographic location. And as a side note, from everything that's been reported, the Deputy Defense Secretary was on vacation. So there's that little added feature to it. Okay, I've got any number of questions about this. And again, I am not trying to be conspiratorial. I'm not trying to be anything other than an honest broker here. There are some things I would like to know. All right, the Secretary of Defense has a minor elective procedure. Okay, fine. But again, as I said a moment ago, elective or not, was he unconscious? And if so, did he, much like he did on January the 2nd, did he transfer certain operational controls to the Deputy Defense Secretary? I think those are reasonable questions. I mean, elective procedure or not, don't we sort of need to know what condition he was in? Now, granted, he was in and out of the hospital in 24 hours. I can understand that. By all we know at this point, it seems like a relatively minor procedure. And again, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial about this. But for 24 hours, we don't know exactly what condition the Secretary of Defense was in and who had certain operational controls of the national defense structure. I think that's more than reasonable to find out. There's another aspect of this that I find a little bit troubling, and it's this, and I want to go back to the statement that Lloyd Austin made over the weekend, and it's this. Quote, I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better, but this is important to say. This was my medical procedure, and I take full responsibility for my decisions about disclosure. Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, if you were a private citizen, all right, then I might understand your desire not to disclose. You're not a private citizen. You are the Secretary of Defense for the United States of America, and your direct report is to the President. No offense, sir, you don't get the option of privacy in this matter. For the White House not to be aware that you were in the hospital in the ICU for 3 days is totally unacceptable. Now, some people are going to say, oh, okay, here's another conservative just bashing on a Biden official. No. There are more important principles involved here. And there's one of them I'd like to point out from somebody who can say it even better than I can. This is an article written by Kash Patel, who himself was a former chief of staff to the Department of Defense. And this is from an article in the Gateway Pundit. I'd like to point out one part of this that is very, very salient, regardless of your politics. From Kash Patel's article, our DoD divides the world into geographic regions we call combatant commands. In other words, Central Command, Indo-Pacific Command, etc. Each is led by a 4-star general, the highest rank in our current military. These combatant commanders and the soldiers underneath their authority are responsible for executing the national command authority in their region. Just imagine if one of them or Biden picked up the phone to call SecDef regarding a hostage situation in Africa, a terrorist attack in Afghanistan, or a breakout of war in the Middle East, only to find that no one was on the receiving end. Where do they get their orders? Who calls the president? How are the troops deployed? And this is, I think, is the problem that I've got with all of this. As I said, I can understand Secretary Austin's desire for privacy. I would feel much the same way. But then again, as I said a moment ago, Lloyd Austin's not a private citizen. He's the Secretary of Defense. I mean, just take as an example that strike that was done in Baghdad that, according to CBS, had been approved by Biden and Secretary of Defense Austin days before all this went down, with Lloyd Austin being in the ICU. Okay, so the operation was approved while Lloyd Austin was still not in the hospital. Fine. What if something had gone wrong with the operation? All right, so now you've got a situation where the operation has gone badly. Biden's looking for answers. He turns to his Secretary of State only to find out he's not there? I'm sorry. That's unacceptable. Again, I respect his privacy. I want to see him recover, much like everyone else. But this should not be allowed to stand. He basically put his desire for privacy above his responsibility to the commander-in-chief. Now, that comment might be surprising to some people who've normally tuned into my channel. But this is one of those moments I don't think Joe Biden necessarily did anything wrong. But there is one thing that I chide Biden for. Take a look at this. This is from Breitbart. Headline: Austin's not going anywhere. Biden not considering sacking Secretary of Defense who failed to disclose hospitalization. Article written by Amy Furr. We have the following. Although Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin failed to inform the White House about his recent hospitalization, President Joe Biden is not considering firing, Politico reported Monday. The outlet cited a group of senior administration officials. If Austin were to issue a resignation letter, Biden would refuse it, a person among them said. Quote, Austin's going nowhere, one official told Politico. The report noted Republicans have been calling for Biden to dismiss the defense secretary. Okay. Here's where I have a problem with what Biden's doing. It's one thing to be caught not knowing where your defense secretary is. That one's on Austin. The fact that you're going to let Austin get away with this, where he gets to put his private desires above his duty to the president and the country, I'm sorry. That's on Biden, and that's unacceptable. It's bad enough Lloyd Austin did this. It's even worse that he goes without consequence and allowed to be in charge of the nation's defense department. So for my part, whether Lloyd Austin offers up his resignation or not, I'm sorry, Biden needs to fire him. And again, it's not an issue that a conservative is getting on a liberal Democrats administration. No, that's not the point. Not for me anyway. Look, in the end, the Department of Defense answers to the president, not the other way around. Now, and that's a lesson Lloyd Austin ought to know. He's a retired 4-star general. Now, this is not exactly the same kind of situation like, say, Truman and MacArthur in the Korean War, where MacArthur is getting uppity. Truman doesn't like it. Truman has to go in and sack his general. Strictly speaking, Lloyd Austin is part of the civilian leadership. But it is wholly and totally unacceptable that he gets to put his desire for privacy above his duty to the president to inform him in a timely manner, hey, I'm going to have to go back in the hospital due to complications from a procedure. The Deputy Secretary of Defense has full operational responsibility. And you didn't inform the president for 3 full days. He had to find out from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, Biden, that is. So no, this is not a good situation, which also begs another question, without trying to sound conspiratorial. If Lloyd Austin's not telling Joe Biden about this, what else is he not telling him? I think that's a very fair question. Trust has been broken here. Lloyd Austin needs to go. But that's what I think about it. What do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number 2, please leave a comment below. I'd like to know what you think about this whole situation. Number 3, please share the video around. Number 4, hit the bell for notifications. I always want to make sure you're aware when new videos, new live streams are coming out. And finally, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative, and I'll see you